Hey YouTube, it's Taki with TaqiTech. Episode 15 here. We're going to talk about coding Model 4. Basically, we're going to load all the task periods into a two-dimensional array. The first part of the array, the row portion of the array, will so the array will be two-dimensional, meaning that we'll have two columns, and each row will contain the amount of minutes for that particular task and the task code number, which is a two-digit number for this project at least. All right, so here is the actual code here. As I said last time, when we talked about when we peeked ahead at Model 5, you can start seeing me start coding some things in for Model 5. And that's where I said, okay, I'm going to leave it off here, and we're going to actually talk about the models that I built. We'll jump into the code here, and we'll talk about the code I have to load the tasks. What I have at the very beginning, well, first off, we're in the module called tasks. So I have a module, very specific module just for tasks. I'm going to close out the Project Explorer there, and first thing I did was I dimmed an array called TaskPeriods, and I dimmed it as data type double. Just because I knew I was going to be dealing with percentages, I was kind of worried that I was going to pass in a number that wasn't a full integer that would have a decimal point. And whenever you're dealing with decimal points, you either have to work with doubles or floats within VBA. I believe there are floats in VBA. Almost 100% sure. Well, I guess I'm about 75% sure. I know there are doubles for sure. Off the top of my head, I don't usually deal with numbers that big, so doubles and integers usually work for me. I don't need to use longs or floats in this language. So I declared it as a double just because I was worried I was going to get a decimal point, because I was dealing with decimal points, because that's basically what a percentage is. Created a subroutine here. It is called load new load tasks. I had a load tasks from before, but it looks completely different than this. I dimmed out two different variables here. I got a row count. Basically, we're doing the same thing that we did when we loaded the breaks. We're just going to, start looking at the spreadsheet, and we're going to keep going until we find an empty row. And then task count, which is basically going to help us when we redim this array up here. So first thing I do is I say my task count equals CountTasks minus 1. Now CountTasks is a private private function. It's a function because we're returning a value. It's going to tell me the number of tasks that I have. And basically it starts at row 14. Let me hop on over to the spreadsheet here. That's not the spreadsheet, that's the model. Here's the actual spreadsheet itself. So it starts with row 14, and it's going to be looking at column C, and it will keep on going until it finds an empty row. So it would stop at 2019 would be our last one. And basically, this one, that's for this function or this subroutine up here. Here, what I'm doing is I'm just going through I said until row count equals 21. And 21 would be our very last. That means we have 8 tasks if everything has a value. And basically, I'm just returning the number of tasks that I have here. So this one would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and it should return 6. So we start off with 6. We set a row count equal to 14 because that's the very first row that we're going to start with, 14. So row count is being used in both of these functions here. And we're done with that function, so we'll just focus on this one. We redim task periods. Okay, now we're not using the keyword preserve here because there's nothing in this array at this point. We're redimming it. Task periods, task count 6 and 1. Now we're making it a two-dimensional array. Up here, when we initially declared it, it was only a one-dimensional array. Now it's a two-dimensional array. So now we say do until row count equals 21, or we get that empty value. So we take our row. This is just like when we loaded the breaks. Basically, take our task periods row count minus 14. That should give us 0. So I'm taking 14 off the top. It should give us 0 here. and we say this equals to, and I'm using a function called round. And round in VBA, I was going to show you guys some documentation. You could Google it if you'd like. It's really not too much there. It rounds just like we were taught to round in elementary school. Anything over 2.5 rounds to 3, 2.4 rounds to 2. There you go. So it rounds, and then I have a function here called convert to percent that I didn't think too much about in explaining it. And it was something that I inherited that I didn't inherit from someone else. I actually wrote it, and I just kind of used it in this project. Maybe we'll talk about that in a future project. I pass in the value, so basically, and then I hard code the 480 here. We're going to have to fix that because we're going to actually need to know the number of minutes, and that's going to need to be dynamic. So that's something I'm going to need to fix probably in the next lecture. And maybe we'll talk about convert to percent in the next lecture as well. Then I now I go from, so I fill in the first row, first column. Now we're going back to the first row, second column, and I'm putting in the task item name or number, depending on what you want to call it. Task code is what we call it here. So I'm putting in a task code. So I should have a number of minutes, 40% of 480, and then it should look like number of minutes. Then we should have 41. And what it should really look like is, if we go to model 4 here, it should look like this. Only I didn't put in here. Let me just go ahead and copy this, and we're just going to go ahead and copy that down. So it should look like this when we're done here. And then we increment the row count one more time, and we keep going through it until we get to that blank value. So let's run it. Here we go. Hit F8. And so our task counts, we're going to go down here. I'm just going to hit the play button. And we can see we have 6 tasks. Go up here. Now you might ask, okay, why did I subtract 1 from it? And that's because we're using a base 0 with the array. So when I say initialize the array 5 and 1, what I'm saying is 6 rows, 2 columns, even though it says 5 and 1, because it's a base 0. 0 counts. All right. So we're going to set our row count to 14. Here we're going to re-initialize or re-dim the array. So now you'll see that we actually have it here. Now the reason I had to do it like this too, I just couldn't redim it and preserve it each time we went in here, is when you redim a 2-dimensional array, you can only change the column. You can't change the first one. You can't change the rows, number of rows. You can't change the number of rows. You can only change the number of columns. So that makes you rethink and be a little bit more creative with your project. All right, let's go ahead and so this is saying do until row count equals 21. So I want to check this real quick. So 21 here. Let me go back to Superstar real quick. So 21 right here. Be here. Okay. I'm worried that if we had a task in there, I'll have to check that out later on. I'm a little suspect on that number at this point. And so we're going to get our first row or first item in the array. And there's a little convert to percent. Well, I guess I'll talk about it now. Basically, so I'm passing in task percent, which is 40, and I'm just multiplying it by 0.01. So that's all I'm doing here. So I guess we won't be talking about that in future. It was just, I didn't really pay too much attention to it. It worked right away. It gave me what I wanted. And that's what I didn't know how complicated it was. If I'd have known it was that simple, I would have said it was that simple, and that would have been the end of it. Okay. So now if we look here, we have our 192. And now when I hit F8 here, we should get, I believe it's 41. Yep. So there's our 41. If you take a look down here, if you can see that. So we got 192 and 41. All right, here we go. we should have here 187 and 45. So let me make this a little bit smaller. Let's move to our model 4 here. Model 4. Okay. So we got 192 and 41, 187, 45. I'm just going to go ahead and hit play here. Let's go look at our next one. 5 and 49. And then the next one is 60 and 98. And the next one is 22 and 40. And finally, task 5, just like what we have right here. And I have to scroll down a little bit. Let's see here. I didn't maximize it. Okay, 14 and 43. So if we look here, 14 and 43. Okay. So as you can see, the tasks loaded correctly. Model 4 is complete. We're not going to print it at this point. We'll stop from printing it until we actually start working on this 11 a.m. and we'll go there. Because I don't think there's going to be that much of a difference between printing it like this and just printing Model 5 right off the bat. So what we'll do is we're going to get our tasks to go from here, this is where we're at now, to here. This is how it should look when we're done. Then what we'll do is we'll start working on the compare subroutine, and then from there we'll move on to the print. So we got like three more steps without any error correction. Error correction, you guys might see how bad error correction actually is. We're going to hopefully be able to use a lot of native Excel for its data validation to help us with that. But we got like three more steps until we get to error correction, and then there's going to probably be some nuances down the road. So I'm saying maybe at the most 6-7 more videos. So that's going to bring us out to pretty much where I thought it would be with the due date, with me being sick and all. So things got pushed back a little bit. But thanks a lot for watching. Hope you learned a lot in this video. If you have any questions, make sure you leave them in the comments. And until next time, take it easy.